Hello and welcome back to Whiskey Uncorked. My name is Brian and today we're going to do something a little bit different. So I've really wanted to get 2 videos a week out, but learning how to video edit and all that stuff is making it a little bit difficult. But I thought, hey, why don't we do a really quick review of a bottle that's almost dead. So I usually try to keep a rotation of bottles. When things get down to about a third full, I'll pour myself a sample most of the time. Tuck that away for a later comparison or a reminder, or just savoring that last dram or so of one of my favorite bottles. So I looked around and the one that was lowest, probably one more dram out of the whole group, is this Longrow Red. Now this is a couple years ago, back in 2020. This is the 13-year-old Chilean Cabernet Sauvignon Matured. And this is a bottling date of 20/01/20, so probably January 20th, 2020. And right before we get into the review, I'm going to do this blind or off the cuff, no previous tasting notes. But I will say that this has been one of my favorite bottles of whiskey that I've had, kind of in this first, really kind of going back to pretty close to when I made a transition over to Scotch. Check out the Springbank video for a little bit of story on that one. But yeah, this Longrow Red Chilean Cabernet Sauvignon bottle has just been delicious all the way through. Luckily, I was able to get a second bottle back when things weren't super crazy. Still probably a bit of a premium on it compared to the UK market, but yeah, before things got nuts. So I don't have to cry too hard over this, but that one's tucked away for future me and friends to break out one day and enjoy. But why don't we just go ahead and jump right into a review, and I'll give it a score and we can all go on about our days. All right, let's get this thing in the glass. As I mentioned, this is one of my favorite bottles that I've had. Doesn't necessarily mean the best or, you know, top 5 whiskey, top 10 whiskey, but just whiskeys that I love to go back to, love to pour a glass of. This has been right up there. There was a Springbank 12 right around that time, which I think was 56.1%. This is 51.6%. That Springbank had some Burgundy and port in it, I believe. But this was, between that bottle and this bottle, fantastic. I also was able to get the the Cabernet Franc bottling right around the same time as this, so I was comparing those two. And this one maybe kind of ruined the Franc bottle, because I love this one so much. But why don't I give you some quick tasty notes and give it a score. So this one isn't super heavily peated. I mean, it is fairly heavily peated for Springbank standards, but there's not a ton coming off the nose. I did do in one of my future reviews, I was taking some initial tasting notes on a Cahuilla bottling, and this one is more subdued than that. Obviously that's an Islay, so you're getting a little bit more of a punchy smoke, but this is more of that earthiness that comes out of a lot of the Springbank peat. So probably one of the best qualities that I've enjoyed through this entire bottle is the level of fruitiness. Now obviously Longrow Reds are always going to be pretty cask forward, but they usually do a pretty good job of balancing it out without it being just heavy-handed. But it is what you expect. A lot of red fruits. We're talking kind of strawberry, raspberry side of things. Not your typical, like, really heavily dried red fruits from your sherry casks. I don't always get coastal freshness on Springbanks or Longrows. This one's got a hint of it. Funk levels are kind of under control. They're there. Probably right about where you want them. In a release like this, I want that cask to be showcased. You always want some of that distillery character to come through, particularly when you're talking about anything out of the Springbank distillery. And this Longrow certainly has its character, but that fruity strawberry raspberry note is just like, it's probably the perfect volume for a whiskey like this, where you're probably expecting that cask to kind of come out as the big show in the tasting notes. All right, so let's try it out on the palate. Man, it's everything that the nose says it's going to be, and maybe a little bit more. Even as the last pour out of this bottle, I don't feel like it's lost any of its punch. And this bottle's been open for a couple years at least. Obviously this is a bottle from 2020. Wouldn't be surprised if I got my hands on this late 2020, early 2021. And it's still exactly what I remember it was when I first opened the bottle. And that's a perfect balance of the Longrow character, which is able to punch through on the palate maybe a little bit more than it does on the nose. And just almost a unique level of fruitiness. I like sherry casks, but I think once you've had a lot of them, you know, they kind of tend to blend together. And when you get something that's like this kind of fruity, and same thing with like the tropical fruits and things that you can get on some bourbon casks, but this type of red fruit is kind of hard to find. Maybe you can get it on some port casks if they're very carefully managed, but this is something special. All right, let's go in for a second sip. So in addition to that fruit, I feel like there is a level of saltiness to this Longrow, which again, you kind of get some of that maritime on the nose and on the palate, but not all the time with Springbank and Longrows. But here I definitely think you can pick it up. Additionally, that peat, that Campbelltown peat is just, it's why I love Springbank so much. I'm not always the biggest Isla peat fan just because of how punchy and overwhelming it is. And it just feels like the Campbelltown peat, that Speyside peat, the Highland peat, it just seems to kind of meld in with everything else that's going on just a little bit better. It's not necessarily trying to be the star of the show, it's just making things a little bit richer, a little bit saltier, and it's not necessarily presenting itself as like, hey, I'm a super heavily peated whiskey, you have to pay attention to me. But this flavor is just an explosion of fruit, salt, wonderful earthiness, a little bit of that kind of mushroomy, like salty mushrooms, that just, I think, is one of the reasons why people love whiskeys out of Springbank so much. All right, let's give this thing a score. It's hard because I'm kind of doing this impromptu. I drank the vast majority of this bottle without ever considering giving it a score. And just out of my pure enjoyment, there's no way I'm not gonna give this a 9 out of 10, right? This is one of my all-time favorite whiskeys. I don't know if it necessarily crosses that line into like legendary, like, is it top 5 best, top 10 best? Maybe not, but in terms of just whiskey that I like to drink and a whiskey that has just convinced me that this is the hobby for me, this is one of the bottles that has unequivocally done that. And therefore, 9 out of 10, no question. Only the second 9 out of 10 I've given so far, the other one being a bottle of 20-year-old Bruichladdich pre-revival back from the 90s. Another bottle that I just recently finished, and it's great to have that list growing. I'm happy to get at least a quick review up onto the channel before this bottle was gone. I'm going to enjoy these last few sips and think about that bottle I've got in the bunker for 10, 15 years from now, opening that thing up and reliving this entire experience. All right, until then, thank you again for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment. Let me know if you like these shorter types of videos. I tend to think that these will get more views, but I like talking about the bottles a little bit more. I would have loved to have another 10 minutes to talk about this thing. But yeah, let me know what kind of videos you like, and hope to see you again soon with another review here on Whiskey Uncorked. But until then, cheers.